Actually, I was sitting there thinking, this is exactly what an extension engineer likes. We have a problem, we try to come up with solutions. Unfortunately, this is the type of problem that can have some pretty drastic consequences, as Robert has explained. Both human health and certainly animal health, but this is I think a dangerous situation. And the fact that we don't have all of the, it is, and also it's a pretty rare event. I think that, as Robert's already mentioned that. And that makes it difficult because you have all of these other events, and I think in this work that we've done, and we're probably not quite as far along as Robert and Laura and their group. We've done a little of information collecting, and we're planning to do more, the case studies, the site visits, and we're putting together a survey that we will be sending out to growers, to kind of targeted growers, so we can try to get a baseline and see if some common factors come out in this. And we've been sharing information with the Iowa folks. We had conference calls, and actually, I think, and my slides have it, I think we have like 5 or 6 universities. This is a Midwest problem because it's a deep pit. We have deep pit manure storage, so it's more or less a Midwest issue. I want to acknowledge David Schmidt. He's probably the Laura Moody equivalent in our shop. David does most of the work, and I usually get my name on a lot of these things too. But David's been involved in putting a lot of this information together. Well, I'll kind of reiterate a little bit of some of the things that Robert discussed, but I'll also maybe talk a little more about what we can do or what we know to try to mitigate or avoid these issues. So far, we've only visited one site. We know of several others. One site in southeast Minnesota that's had an explosion. This is a picture. This basically, essentially exploded. This occurred, essentially it went something like this. The person had a lot of foaming in their pit. The barn was empty. Literally, the foam was coming up through the slats. He wanted to knock down the foam, and one way of that, and other people have done this, is actually agitate. So he started to agitate, went inside the building, just made some, I think, adjustment. As he was coming out, essentially it exploded. He got blown like 30, 40 feet. And the same thing, basically, the agitation probably released the methane that was in the foam, and a heater was, with a pilot light, ignited. And in our particular case, we have fire marshal data. We went down there. We're going to be visiting them again. But essentially, it raised up the roof on one of the rooms, 3-4 feet, and then it crashed, came back down. So that's essentially what happened here. This is actually foam that's oozing up through the slats. This is an 8-foot deep pit, and when David was there, essentially there was 4 feet of foam, and this is from the pump out pit. That's how it looks, and it looks, it's pretty ugly looking stuff. It's certainly not soap bubbles like what we think. It's very fine, and I think also we saw this in Robert's some of Robert's slides. Just a few things on foaming, and again, this kind of follows up and confirms what Robert said. We have seen foaming for a long time. I go back to the 70s, and I remember occasionally seeing foam in buildings, even seeing a few kind of flash fires. People were welding on something, and all of a sudden they see this flash, and that occasionally happened, but it was a pretty rare event. something we got, we noted, but it wasn't probably enough of a problem that we really started to probably follow up on it. We knew, it was probably methane. Again, we said then, and we say again, probably the best way we know of now, probably with a fair amount of confidence, is make sure you're ventilating your barn so that you aren't exceeding these explosive limits, that you always have some air moving through. It's a pretty common thread, and I think I heard that in Robert's talk as well, that these occurred when there were not animals in there and there was limited ventilation. There's always been this problem, but there seems to be more frequent reports of foaming, and we do think there's this obvious link between foaming and these fires and explosions. And this is essentially a deep pit manure storage issue. We have said, I think we've got like 6 between, and there are more. I think I think that the frequency is enough so that whatever it is, there seems to be something that's causing this more frequently than it has in the past. We have, most of the time there's foam involved, but sometimes there isn't. And that may be anomalies, but those are more flash fire issues. We have, in the western part of our state, there seems to be a prevalence of more of these flash fires that literally working in a building, people have reported welding, and all of a sudden they'll see this fire start and it'll move just like a grass fire down the length of the barn. Now, again, that has been reported several different times. I'm sure it has occurred. We're trying to follow up on some of those leads and see if we can deduce some things. A little more on foaming. Obviously, foaming in itself is a problem because it reduces the volume. You've got this. Pigs get dirty. I have seen pigs in pens that have foam, and it's pretty ugly. And I think the worst or the biggest issue has been that this foam captures this methane. And in this talk that David has pulled together for our commercial manure pumpers, he used the same video, I think, that we got from Robert that actually shows this stuff burning. And so it is. I think that's pretty good evidence that there is a fair amount of methane in this. Okay, this essentially occurs many times, and I think last week at our pork congress and in this past fall when we've talked to people on the phone, people that had this problem, it's pretty common for them to say, we have 4 barns and it's only a problem in one barn, or it's we've got multiple rooms nursery and it just seems to be a problem in this one room. That kind of information makes it really difficult to figure out. Everything else supposedly is the same. What is unique about this? And the foaming, I think, once it starts, it's really hard to stop it. And it seems to grow. I think there's this imbalance, and I think what Robert's talked about has dealt a little bit more into this. We probably know that this is occurring, but what's causing it, is really, really difficult. There's diet, water source, climate, all of these other factors, and we're really kind of at a loss. I think some of the dangers, obviously, methane is going to be always produced. and we know that, and I think and most of the time it's released in a manner that's not captured at a reasonable rate that your ventilation system can take care of that. But the foam in this particular case captures it, and when they're released, you get a kind of a cloud of this released. And again, the 60-70% content in the foam kind of, I think, is evidence that it will hold it. And when it's diluted, it can become explosive, and it doesn't need that much of a spark to release it. The 5 to 20% or 5 to 15% is the explosive level. So if it's less than that, not a problem. If it's more than that, not a problem. Now, schematically, I think David put this together. This kind of helps visualize what we've been saying. In a no foam barn, you have that deep pit. You have manure. You may have a small amount of methane that may be trapped, but it's really quite small. Same thing with the methane at this flammable level. But in a foam barn, you have this big zone of foam, and as I said, it can be 6, 8, a foot, 2 feet. As I said, this one barn they had 4 feet. So you have all of this foam that's kind of locked, or methane that's locked into this foam. And when you spray it or knock it down or agitate and release it, all of a sudden you have this whole area that is in the flammable. And if there's a spark, you've got an explosion. Okay, precautions and management. How can we manage this? The disruption of foam, well, yes, it can be agitated or it can release. You can spray it, spray water on it, sprinkle water. Pig activity will reduce the foam and release it. And then we have these ignition sources and then these explosions. Okay. Question, do we really need foam to have a fire? Not necessarily, but it helps. David's saying here the explosion is bigger because you essentially are releasing methane in a much shorter amount of time. I really think the foaming is kind of the precursor to most of the problems that we have seen, and it sounds like in Robert's particular case, I think that was true for the places they visited. Okay, the importance of ventilation. As I said, if you ventilate these facilities, make sure you get enough air exchange, and we're below the explosive limit on methane, we won't have an explosion. We did some back-of-the-envelope calculations. More or less, Robert mentioned just assuming that the methane production from these pits are similar to an anaerobic digester, because we have some of those generation rates, and just did an air exchange, how much air exchange you really need to keep it below this 5%. And typically 4 air changes per hour, which is most of the time your minimum ventilation rate, will keep that under wraps. Now, unfortunately, if you've got a whole bunch of foam and you release it, you're going to get a big spurge of this, so you may not be able to, at 4 air changes, to keep it below explosive limits. I have put in some of our news releases to maybe ventilate up at 10 air changes per hour when you're concerned about this or when there's an issue, and make sure. And the other item, and again, Robert mentioned this, pit fans may be blocked. Essentially, manure may be high enough and they may be restricted, or if you saw on that one slide, that pump out port, all of that foam, you're not going to be able to move much air through there either. So I would almost recommend that ventilation be provided by wall fans rather than pit fans. Now, If you have curtain-sided barn and only have wall fans, or only have pit fans, excuse me, you're going to have to use those. Or make sure you got some wind and curtains open. The situation has occurred primarily when we've had no or very few animals in these barns. Minimum ventilation may or may not dilute the methane to below the explosive limits. So bottom line, again, kind of sounding like a broken record here. We got to be extremely cautious when foaming is broken. Good ventilation with or without pigs in there, or without, is important. You know, we've got the other problem of toxic gases. During pump out, we scrub and release tremendous amounts of gases in these deep pit storages, and we all know those are other problems with loss of pigs, and even you have the potential for people as well. Keep people out of the building. This is certainly recommended. We don't want to. It's one thing to lose buildings and maybe pigs, but certainly not people. Ventilate properly, fans on, curtain closed if wind is not blowing, ceiling inlets open, pump out sealed. I think many times people in a mechanically ventilated barn, it's better to actually not open up the barn too much because you lose your vacuum, you lose your static pressure. It's really better to have your inlets operating properly. You're going to get much better distribution on a fan ventilated. On a curtain barn or naturally ventilated barn, obviously you're going to have to depend upon natural ventilation and wait, make sure you have some natural wind or air exchange. Mixing fans will help distribute it, but remember, mixing fans really don't exchange air. They can help distribute this a little bit. We're talking here about the rooster tailing on if you're in the process of pumping. That's usually a no-no. You're going to release a lot of gases, including methane. No agitation. We're really recommending you really shouldn't agitate your manure in the pit until it's below 2 feet below the slats. Otherwise, you really lose this zone, and if possible, only agitating intermittently. Just a few other comments here. There really are no current recommendations to permanently prevent the foam formation. We do have defoaming agents, but I think in the anaerobic situation, they're probably not permanent. Until we understand exactly how that foaming is generated in an anaerobic situation, I think it's going to be difficult to do something permanently to prevent it. As I already mentioned and is already apparent, I think a number of people are looking at this in the Midwest, all of these universities and a few others.